So if you're anything like me, you got your Fujifilm camera and you're really loving the system, and then you want to get a telephoto lens. Then you run into some pretty big roadblocks, or at least your wallet runs into some pretty big roadblocks. Let's see, they have the 50 to 230, which is actually a really good lens for how much it costs. The image quality is great, and it's even pretty good at focusing. Then there's the 55 to 200, which is an awesome lens, I hear. I've never owned that one, but by all accounts it's a great lens. Then there's the 50 to 140, which I also own, which is a phenomenal lens. For weddings, I can't shoot a wedding without it. Well, I wouldn't shoot a wedding without it. But if you look at all of those, none of them are really that telephoto. I mean, 230 is the most you can get for the least amount of money. But when you want to take pictures of songbirds or little tiny crazy things running around, chipmunks and stuff, 230 millimeters really isn't that much. And I know Fuji's thinking, well, if you factor in the crop factor, it's like 350 millimeters, and that's cool, but let's face it, it's not that far of a reach, okay? Then we can step up our game a little bit, right? We get the 100 to 400. It's kind of pricey though, kind of pricey. Then there's the new 200 millimeter f2, and that we're just not even going to talk about that. That's super expensive. So if you own either of those lenses, that is awesome for you. I'm happy for you, but it doesn't really help me. I shoot weddings, and the longest thing I need is the 50 to 140. So all my lenses that I use for weddings have to earn their keep. Like, I have to make money with them. So I really can't justify owning a 200 millimeter f2 because I don't shoot sports, I don't shoot motorsports, and the 100 to 400, I would never use it at a wedding. So it kind of leaves me in a weird place where I have all this like kind of high-end Fuji gear, but I can't bring myself to buy an expensive telephoto lens. And so what I finally determined is that instead of just looking at like old manual lenses to adapt, I started looking at stuff made in like the early 90s when the optical formulas were pretty good. It's just lenses like Sigmas and Tamrons, the focusing was just terrible. So what I did is I started zeroing in on the Sigma 400 millimeter, because I remember back when I shot Canon, Sigma was always known for having pretty good image quality. It's just their autofocus was so terrible, no one wanted to use them. And I figured that's great for me because I don't need the autofocus. So like I said, I started zeroing in on the 400 millimeter at 5.6. Now there's a few different versions of this lens. I didn't count. I think I ran across at least 3 or 4 different versions. So there's the 400 5.6, and then I believe the 400 5.6 APO is a different model. Then after that they came with the 400 5.6 APO tele-macro version, which, spoiler alert, that's the one that I got. And then I believe after that there was even a further evolution where that telemacro version also got HSM, which is hypersonic motor, I think, for Sigma. So it just had a better focusing motor, I guess. So yeah, if you get the telemacro version, it has really good image quality, and so that's this guy right here. Yeah, so a few highlights of the body. It has a retractable hood built in, so you see, you can just pull it out. It's nice, you won't lose it, although putting it back is kind of difficult. This gigantic piece here is the focusing ring, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So what you have to keep in mind is that if you want to go this route, you're going to want to get the Nikon mount version of this lens, because the early Nikons, they all had aperture rings. Well, not all, but a lot of early Nikon lenses had aperture rings right on the lens. So since if you were to get a Canon version or a Pentax, I think there's a Minolta version too, but if you got any of those, it would not have the aperture control here because you would control that on the body. But since we're using a dumb adapter, we have no aperture control. So I determined that this lens was the best bang for the buck. It had the great image quality that I had seen, but I wouldn't spend more than I need to on the HSM version because I don't need the focusing because I knew I was going to be manually focusing. And then I knew I wanted a Nikon mount so that I could control my aperture here. Yeah, so the lens is awesome. You can see it's really not that big, you know. It's pretty big, but it's nothing like a, I don't know, like a 600 millimeter or a, I don't know. It's not really that big. So right here I have it attached to my X-T20. So I wanted to show you how it fits on the X-T20 in case you're considering going that route. It fits better with the X-H1, obviously. And one thing I will say is hand holding it can be done. It's tougher with the X-T20. With the X-H1, having the sensor stabilization really helps out, but you can handhold it with the X-T20. Now I've only really shot it in like the early morning, and I'll show you some sample pictures in a minute, but early morning or maybe the middle of the day, so I've not done any like low light stuff, although I don't, when would you ever really shoot like wildlife in low light? I know you can flame me in the comments because I don't know, but I guess the point is, for me, spending about, I think I spent about $160 on this lens, and the adapter was about $10. So I mean, for under $200, being able to get image quality, you'll see in the sample photos, and you can judge for yourself. To me, that makes it worth it. If I have to stop down to f8 and manually focus, it really doesn't matter to me, because with the focus peaking in these cameras, it's really not that hard. Now I will tell you, when I first got it, I knew that I'd probably only be shooting birds that were kind of like perched or like sitting still, or deer that weren't moving a lot. I kind of had to come to terms with not being able to shoot birds in flight because I knew with manual focus it'd probably be too tough. But you'll see like example like this, or like this, or like this, or even like this. You'll see that shooting birds in flight is actually possible. Now, I'm not going to win any awards for these photos, okay? I'm not that into wildlife photography. I really enjoy it, but I know I'm not making money off of it. And for me, it's really just therapeutic. You go out and you go for a nice hike, and you see something along the way, you get a picture of it. So for most of the shots I take, I knew that manual focus, it wouldn't be ideal, but I knew it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me, especially considering the price. So yeah, I'm actually surprised. The focusing can be a little twitchy, and I think it's just because this lens was designed to be autofocus, so we'll come back to this part here. It's just a little quick, like the slightest turn can send that focus peaking way, way far, way close. So it takes a while to get used to, but I'll tell you what, after a few outings with it, you do get used to it, and you can start to anticipate where you're going to need the focusing to be. So, I mean, if you guys see the sample images and you think it looks good, I think it looks great. And especially when you consider the price, because that's the thing, Fuji just doesn't have anything affordable. You have the affordable option, but it just doesn't have that much reach. And then things get really expensive really fast. So if you're kind of looking for something budgety and you know that you're probably just going to be shooting still objects, or if you enjoy the challenge of trying to track birds with manual focus, hey, I would say try it out. So I'll leave something in the description that tells you which model of the lens I got, which mount, and then which adapter I went with. But I just wanted to share that with you guys. And now let's just roll some sample images. Thanks for watching. Bye.